Grand opening, grand closing for the alligator Alcatraz, the site of the makeshift detention center in Miami-Dade County, had already been blocked by environmental groups. And one of the environmental groups that was key and integral to blocking that site being used for anything, the Friends of the Everglades, back again, this time they are paired up with the Center for Biological Diversity, which has something like a 90% win rate. Like 9 out of the 10 lawsuits they filed against the Trump administration last term, they won. So it's a great team. They're also filing on behalf of the Miccosukee, which is Seminoles tribe in Florida, for encroaching on their sacred land. Now, that just tells you something. And there's, again, as usual, lots of conflicts where the Trump administration, Donald Trump, this time because it's in Florida, Ron DeSantis, who wants to be heir apparent, but he never will be, with his little whiny, little squeaky, high-pitched voice. And Kristi Noem said things in the public record that totally conflicts what the Department of Justice attorneys on behalf of Donald Trump alleged in defense to this lawsuit. As usual, if you follow me, my name is JJ Legal. One of the things I do here is I track the various different lawsuits filed against the Trump administration and help you get some sense of calm to knowing that amidst all this crazy shock and awe, that they get pulled back. Thanks for the courts. Thanks for the nonprofit groups that are fighting on our behalf. Sadly, because we're paying for these lawsuits ultimately, the Trump administration, they just act first and they figure it out later. They're emotional, they're reflexive, they don't really do things with forethought, they ignore the laws and process and procedures that tells you to set up a standard, they don't do any of this stuff. The United States government was founded, like 250 something years old, and along the way we said, you know what, we don't want to have a crazy administration that comes in and just do whatever they want. So before we mess up this great government that we've created, you know what, you're gonna have to have data, you're gonna have to research, you're gonna have to have give public comment. You're going to do all that stuff. The Trump administration never do that stuff. They just act. And that's why on the Administrative Procedure Action grounds, they lose. A lot of their losses is because they violate the congressional act called the Administrative Procedure Act, which requires executive agencies to have a thorough record before they do things. And again, because they fail to do the record, they're going to lose this alligator Alcatraz. But it's not just on APA. So they allege the National Environmental Policy Act requires you to do a environmental impact statement if you're going to do anything that's going to impact the environment. In fact, really quick, let's go back on history. The very first environmental impact statement in the state of Florida was done in relations to this same property. That's right. They had planned to make that place the largest airport and airstrip in the United States government. It was going to be 5 times the size of JFK. It was to accommodate the big growing population boom of the Florida and all of the fabulous sites, Key West and things like that. But however, the Department of Interior Secretary at that time said we need to do an impact statement, and one of the lead organizations was the Friends of the Everglades, which has just been formed at the time, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, great suffragist and journalist, was part of that project. And at the end of the day, they said that because it's 6 miles north of the Florida Everglades, that it would be a negative impact on the biodiversity and just essentially disrupt all of the environments in Florida. It would also impact and encroach upon the tribes, the Seminoles and the Miccosukee tribes in that area, and they had to squash that project. So, and they're back again doing the same damn thing. And they didn't do, according to the mayor of Dade County, asked the state to do a full environmental impact statement, which they did not do. And also, if you don't want to do one, you can file an exemption. The Trump administration didn't file an exemption. They didn't do the impact statement. These impact statements can take years, even decades sometimes, before they do it. And that's when you do proper process if you're following the laws, what these guys don't do. So the impact of the big Cypress jet port, which was going to be there, squashed it back then, and it just squashed it again. The Trump administration, here's the thing, again, when the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, they countered and said, wait a minute, hold on. They said the Department of Homeland Security neither funded nor authorized the 3,000 capacity tent and trailer detention center. They said, we don't know what you're talking about. We didn't do this. This is all a Florida project. This has nothing to do with us. Meanwhile, let's roll the tapes. Kristi Noem said the new facility will be funded in large part by the Shelter and Services Program within the Federal Emergency Management Act and Agency. Do they not know that we can see? She said that. Donald Trump himself, during his tour this week, Donald Trump said, we took the FEMA money that Joe Biden allocated to pay for the free luxury hotels where he's paying hundreds of millions of dollars in New York City, blah, 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 blah. And then that's what we're going to use this for. Which one is it? Is it they're going to lose. I'm going to cite and quote what the lawyers for the plaintiffs said. It said, from everything that we are seeing in news statements, we're hearing from federal officials, the feds have their fingerprints all over this project, and that's because they appear to be working hand in glove with the state. So besides the fact that the city mayor of Dade County asked the state to do an environmental impact statement before allowing this to go through. So on the local level and the state level, it's also unlawful because they didn't do what's required by the Florida state government requires this. So it's not just the federal. I guess they're saying that we shouldn't be sued. But even if that's the case, and they could possibly do a suit against the state government as well at the same time while they're here. And if they're saying that, well, we shouldn't be sued, we had nothing to do with this as Florida, but then Florida needs to do it. But at the end of the day, they can't do this. And it's already flooded. There is a record and pattern with these folks. Trump administration just pops off in total disregard to what the legal standard and the legal cases and what the Department of Justice attorneys are arguing on their behalf. It's totally contradicting every single thing the lawyers. So the lawyers are just, either you look like you're lying. Sign said, I'm not aware of any planes being taken off. And he said that as the planes were being taken off. So either the lawyers are lying on behalf of the Trump administration, or there's a plausible deniability where they don't tell the lawyers anything. So the lawyers can stay, well, we didn't know, while they actually do the other thing. And in any event, you're working together in cahoots. If you do something and it violates a court order, it's violating a court order. I'm so mad the Supreme Court is just giving them green lights at the green light with these procedural wins and letting them do what they need to do, even though on substance they know the Donald Trump administration is violating the Administrative Procedure Act, the First Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 8th Amendment, minute after minute. Congress, every single thing they're doing is in violation of so many laws in the Supreme Court, disturbingly so. It's just like telling them, well, we don't know, we're not quite sure, we'll just let you do what you do and look the other way, even though we know it's unlawful, and wait till it comes back up to us on substance. And meanwhile, they're going to damage and destroy people's lives, but we'll just wait till it comes to us on substantive ground, because when it comes to them on substantive ground, they know very well there's no basis for this, and they're violating law, and they won't be able to uphold none of the things they're doing. They're going to get struck down bit by bit by bit. I don't know why they're giving them these little procedural wins. Maybe because he appointed them and they feel like we need to do something to give them these wins before we have to strike them down with substance. I don't think that helps people. I don't think people are happy knowing that, if that's the case, because they just really destroying the credibility of the courts, as Amy is Kentucky Brown Jackson, Elena Kagan, and Justice Sotomayor has said in repeated dissenting opinions. You guys are really destroying our reputations by kowtowing to this fool. Anyway, that's the update. JJ Legal. Follow for more. Check out here this playlist if you're watching this on YouTube. JJLegal.com for Know Your Rights cards, and I'll see you in the next video.